Hi, Paul Arnold here, sometimes known as Stuttering Professor. I spent the past 30 years working in advertising agencies, so I want to talk today about a very important issue, is how to get the best out of your advertising agency. But when I say advertising agency, I don't just literally mean agencies that just do the TV work. It's any of your communications agencies. I tend to use the word ad just as the overall sort of church of all forms of communications. Because the same applies whether you're talking to a social media agency, to your media agency, to your PR agency, your sponsorship agency. And there's another video I've done which is talking about how do you manage that complexity of multi-agency teams. But for now, today, I just want to really focus upon how do you get the very best out of your agencies? And let's be quite frank, for most marketers, it's the largest bill, the largest check that they write out. And the question is, are they really getting the maximum value out of it? And certainly, when you read about it, agencies and clients which have really strong, powerful relationships create most amazing work that really does transform the health of clients' business. And that's what we're all desperately needing to get, particularly in the current age where there's so much complexity out of the marketplace and so many forms of competition. When I worked at one agency, we used to have 3 ways that we used to class a client. And obviously we wanted to have them delivering on of all 3, but 2 was best. And 1, we really started having a view about whether we wanted to work with them. And those 3 things were fortune, fun, and fame. And I want to use that as a sort of bedrock about how to get the best out of your agencies. So let's talk about fortune. Let's talk about, you've got to sort the money out up front. Agencies, the car park in the old days were full of Italian red cards with an F on the front, and now they're full of Italian red cards with an F on front. But in the old days it was a Ferrari, now it's a Fiat. There isn't the money there these days. And I actually think that agencies are being underpaid for what they deliver. And my advice for you is pay a little bit more than you maybe need to. It's a bit like if you really want a BMW, you can't expect to get a BMW for the price you pay for a Kia. So actually we must invest in that. And I always remember someone once told me a nice little sort of misquote about TIP stands for to ensure prompt attention. And actually, if we want to make sure that our agencies are really performing for us, then make sure there's a really powerful bonus system in place that allows them to earn the money. And I think quite importantly, make the team who are working on it earn the money rather than just the guy who sits in the top floor getting a larger share of what he should or shouldn't get. Then I want to really talk about the fun part of it. And the fun part is about you really want your account to be the account that everyone in the agency wants to work on. It's the one that actually, where opportunities come up, people are fighting over each other to try to work on. Why? Because when we say fun, we don't literally mean just fun, ha-ha, giggles. We mean it's a really enjoyable piece of it. It's a business that is doing really exciting work. It's got great clients. You're working on some really important things. All those help to make it be the account that people are desperate to go and work on. And as such, how do you build those relationships is fundamental to creating a really strong bond. We always say that we shouldn't be working like that, but we should be working alongside each other. And in my experience, the greatest relationships which I've had with clients, we are together, brothers in arms, often against the big nasty CFO or whatever it is, or the competitor, who is the sort of the enemy we're fighting against. And you want to be working together. You know what? And there's nothing magical about this. It's about the same with every relationship. You know what gets the best out of you. And you also know what gets the worst out of you. And frankly, it's exactly the same thing for your agencies. And I always say, you know, it's down to actually three things. It's the ROA. It's about respect, it's about open comms, and it's about acknowledgement. So in other words, if you think about your significant other relationships, it's the fact that you have respect for them. Actually, great relationships are always built upon open communications. You can say what needs to be said. And there's acknowledgement. There is this thing about, I really value you. I value what you bring. And that's a really important thing if you want to keep fueling and making that relationship be a healthy relationship. And I think actually at the end of the day, you know, it's up to both partners of a relationship to put the effort in. Just because clients are paying the bill, that doesn't mean you can sit back and say, well, it's up to you to do the running. No, that's never working in actually your normal relationship, so why should it work here? Both sides have got to work on the relationship and put the time in. And I always say that, you know, we have to be very careful that we develop a healthy relationship. And you've probably all heard of the transactional analysis model of parent, adult, child, and you have critical parent and adapted child. And that's a very unhealthy place to have an agency-client relationship. And we've got to get to adult-adult relationship, or child-child sometimes, but adult-adult is where we're looking across the table and think they're adding value. They're people who I want to listen to. And if all you're doing is you're sort of criticizing the agency, what it does, you push the agency down into an adapted child place. And that's never a healthy place. That is always going to lead in tears at some point in time. And therefore I talk about, you know, we've got to make sure we're not treating the agencies as just like a supplier. You know, this idea that Martin Buber, a great German philosopher, talked about I-it relationships and I-thou relationships. An I-it relationship is, you know, you're just, you know, a person who's supplying me a service, deliver, don't question, don't ask questions, just do what you're telling and I want it done on time. That's never a healthy place with any relationship to be in. And we've got to have an I-thou, and an I-thou is a relationship of mutual respect and trust. You know, look, and it's hard. It's harder than actually a normal one. Why? Because they're on the other side of town. But you know what? With every good relationship, time invested delivers. So in other words, you've got to go out with the agency. You've got to go over to their place as well as them coming to you. And you've got to put the time in. And I really encourage the CMO to also spend time with the agency. I really respect the CMO. He's crazy busy, but actually it's one of the most important functions that you do is to deliver the external presentation of the brand. And I really say that's one of the most important things. And we must always focus our energies and times onto the most important things that make the biggest difference to our brands. And I think you've got to spend time up front working on actually defining that relationship. You know, I do lots of work with new business teams who come together. And one of the first things we do is we sit down and we work out what is our charter, what's our mission, what's our purpose, what's our objectives, what's our short-term and our long-term objectives, what's our values, how are we going to work together? And critically, one of the things we do, we'll sort of do a sort of, you know, a process where we'll look at the process, we'll work out how we're interrelating with all the other agencies, where are the critical points, where are the points that really drains the, you know, the sort of, drains the sort of value or the, you know, from the process, what can we parallel track, you know, what's getting in the way. And then the other thing we also do is think, where's it going to go wrong? Because these things are never going to go right all the time. And how are we going to deal when we go wrong? Because it's so much better if we work out a process up front then before the actual event happens, when emotion comes in. And emotion always starts to poison relationships. So let's deal with all that stuff up front. And having done all that basic stuff, what we then spend time doing is getting to know each other. Because there's a lot of work that shows that when we get to know each other at a deeper level, that we can have the honesty of the communication we need to have. You know, Pixar talks very much about how they have these meetings where there's a lot of sort of critical assessment of the minutes worth of filming they've done. where you can be open and you can be, truthful. And if you can't be truthful, it's the end of all relationships. And that truthfulness and openness is built upon respect. One of the great MDs I used to work with, always used to say, great work doesn't come out of easy conversations. And in some ways, you've got to have an agency that's pushing back. You don't want to have pat boys who are just agreeing with you all the time, because there's no value there. You've got to respect that an agency will see it slightly differently, and it will be a bit more difficult, but you know what? As long as you respect that and you don't try to crush them, you are going to get really powerful advice, which is going to work to deliver a better answer. So I really think that we've got to work very much on actually getting that relationship sorted out to allow honesty to come through. And then the last of those things, because I talked about ROA, respect, open, consent, and acknowledgement, is acknowledgement. You know what? We're just human beings. We all like to be acknowledged for the work we've done and to be thanked for it. No creative, no agency goes into work that morning and says, I think I'm going to do a really bad job. Everyone wants to try to do a good job. And a thank you goes a long way, as my grandmother used to say. A friend of mine, Paul Burns, tells a lovely story about one of his old accounts he worked on. He used to work on the newspaper, so they're making ads every week. And he had one editor-in-chief who'd come down, a bit of a grumpy, surly guy. He just watched the video, asked it to be played 3 times, and would sort of always find fault with it. And the agency would always defend it, and in the end the client would say, well, yeah, I'm the boss, just do it. And they'd all walk off a bit grumpy and not very happy with what happened. And then they got a new executive editor in charge. And basically he was a completely different person, a very charming man who would come down and say, you know what, I really am amazed at the great work you guys do. I really respect what you do, and you take what I give you the beginning of the week, you do amazing stuff and fantastic. And then he'd find the good things about the work you've done. Say, that's great, but it'd be really great if you could do a little bit more on the end bit or do a bit of that. You know what? The agency bent over backwards to try to help him. And you know what? The criticism the first guy had are the same the second guy had, but it was how he presented it. He presented from a place of positivism rather than a place of negativism. So actually, it works for all of us. Pavlov didn't get it wrong. We all serve, when we get better praise. So build that in, and particularly when it's honest and truthful praise. I'm not into just giving a bottle of champagne just for the sake of giving bottles. That's just fake praise. So do honest feedback. So anyway, I hope that's useful. Look, me and Mickey, we do a lot of work at We Ignite in this field about how do you get the best out of agency? How do you release that sort of energy that's inside agencies? As I said, we do work with actually how do we bring new teams together, particularly when there's new agency-client sort of relationship. It's really important to work on that stuff. So if that's of any use, please look at the website or the email contact at the end of this video. Anyway, take care and best of luck with your agencies. Ciao.